Good day and great health. My name is Dr. Chiropractic of Ohio Specific Chiropractic. I'm a pediatric, family wellness, and upper cervical specific chiropractor. Today in this video, I'm going to be answering the question, does chiropractic have any effect on a fever? And my short answer is yes, but probably not in the way that you think. Now, before we kind of delve into the effects that chiropractic can have on a fever, let's answer the question, what is a fever? Now, a fever is a normal and healthy immune response that our body creates to help fight off an invading bug or pathogen. The major expression of this is going to involve increasing our body temperature. The reason our body temperature increases is that this creates a hostile environment for that pathogen, so our body can kill off that pathogen more easily. Now, before the body temperature rises, our first defense involves a white blood cell called a macrophage. For the most part, that macrophage can contain and kill off whatever that pathogen is. But if the macrophage can't do it on its own, it starts to call on reinforcements from the body. The macrophage will then tell the body to start the production of a substance called a pyrogen. That pyrogen will then inform the hypothalamus in our brain that we need to start the process of increasing our body temperature. So generally speaking, the more pathogens we have in our body, the more our body will produce pyrogens, and the more pyrogens that are found in our body, the higher the temperature will be. This means that a fever works on a gradient. It's going to raise or lower depending on the quantity and quality of pathogens in the body, the quantity and quality of pyrogens produced, and the quantity and quality of the communication between the pyrogens and our hypothalamus. Generally speaking, fevers can be put into certain ranges or groups. If a fever is between 100 and 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit, this is considered a low-grade fever and is beneficial to our body. If it's between 102.2 to 104.5 degrees Fahrenheit, this is considered a moderate fever and is still beneficial to our body to fight off that infection. If the temperature reaches between 104.5 to 107.9 degrees Fahrenheit, this is considered a high fever. It is still very beneficial to the body in the process of fighting off that infection. At this point, though, there will be a lot more discomfort associated with that fever. If you feel more comfortable at this point to contact your healthcare provider with any questions or concerns, it's often recommended at this point to do so. It's important also to note at this point, though, this temperature range of a fever does not cause any brain damage. If the temperature reaches 108 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, this is considered a serious fever. This is still beneficial for the body to fight off that infection, but at this point too, it's also recommended to contact the healthcare provider if you have any questions or concerns, because depending on the person, this is when harmful effects or detrimental situations can arise. Now, before we talk about the chiropractic effect, let's talk a little bit about the medical approach to a fever. For the most part, the medical approach is going to involve reducing the fever and or treating the symptoms. The primary kind of quote-unquote symptom of a fever is the presence of that pathogen in the body. Now, the major treatment of that pathogen is going to be the administration of antibiotics to kill off that bug. The thing, though, about antibiotics is that they don't kill all bugs, they only kill bacteria. And in fact, they don't kill all bacteria, they just kill some bacteria. The overuse of antibiotics throughout the years has actually resulted in the production of a new form of bacteria called superbugs that have built up a resistance to some of the strongest antibiotics that are on the market. The secondary symptom that is treated is the increased body temperature and the associated discomforts felt with the fever. The majority way that is treated is through fever-reducing drugs. The thing, though, the research is starting to show that reducing that fever as the first course of action is not really often recommended. If we follow the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations, they don't recommend reducing the fever as that first course of action. Quoting from them, fever is not an illness, rather it is a symptom of sickness and is usually a positive sign that the body is fighting infection. There's a kind of a pithy statement that goes along the lines of tough it up for 72 hours or bear it for 2 weeks. That means if you try to reduce that fever early on, there's a higher chance of prolonging that infection. Something that could, should only last maybe 72 hours, though there's going to be a little bit more discomfort associated with that fever. But if you start to reduce that fever early on, you have a greater chance of prolonging that infection and making things worse down the road. Now, kind of putting on our chiropractic lenses, let's look at a fever through that perspective. As a chiropractor, when I ultimately read a statement like this saying that a fever is not an illness but rather a symptom of sickness, it kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit. You see, a fever is more of an expression of health than a symptom of sickness. Again, because a fever is a normal and healthy immune response, how can something that is a normal and healthy response of our body be considered a symptom of sickness? Those kind of things don't compute in my brain a little bit. So that kind of leads to the chiropractic approach to not just a fever, but conditions of the body in general. Chiropractic aims to improve the expression of health by removing nerve system disruptions. The major nerve disruptor that we work with as chiropractors is a vertebral subluxation. Now, a vertebral subluxation can interfere with the communication between the brain, in this case we're going to focus on the hypothalamus, and the body, in this case the production of pyrogens. So when a vertebral subluxation is present, this means that the hypothalamus can't talk with or communicate with the pyrogens as best it can, and the pyrogens can't communicate or talk with the hypothalamus as best as they can. What this means then, what's the result of this, is that the body temperature could be too high or too low, or the pyrogen production could be too high or too low if that vertebral subluxation is present and interfering with that communication between the hypothalamus, the brain, and the body, and the production of the pyrogens. Now, the goal of chiropractic is not to treat the fever per se, or there's no such thing as a fever adjustment. What we do is we adjust the vertebral subluxation of the body, of the nervous system, to allow for a greater expression of the nervous system. So when we adjust that vertebral subluxation, say someone's in the throes of a fever, if we adjust that vertebral subluxation, the fever might increase, it might decrease, or it might not change at all. Again, the main objective of chiropractic is not to treat any sort of sickness or illness of the body. Our main objective is to help improve the potential of the health expression. So in this case, a fever is an expression of health. So by adjusting the vertebral subluxation, we can allow for a better expression of that fever. Now this was just a kind of a quick primer in the connection between chiropractic and fevers. But if you have any questions or concerns about this, or any other questions about health topics, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website at ohiospecific.com. Thank you very much.